The laughter was supposed to be lighthearted. But that night, it cut like a blade. In the glittering lights of NBC's Late Night with Seth Meyers, the air felt different, tense, electric, unpredictable. The crowd roared, the cameras rolled, and sitting at the corner of the guest sofa was Maya Rudolph, a woman whose sharp wit has humbled presidents, movie stars, and anyone foolish enough to fake authenticity in Hollywood. Yet, when she turned her comedic fire toward Meghan Markle, the so-called duchess who traded castles for camera crews, the laughter shifted from amusement to something darker, something that made even Seth himself squirm in his chair. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was supposed to be another night of clever banter, but instead, it became the night Maya Rudolph publicly stripped the fairy tale off Meghan Markle's crown. And in that moment, as the words "fake duchess" echoed across the studio, the royal brand Meghan had spent years perfecting began to crumble, live, on national television. But how did it come to this? How did a Hollywood actress, once celebrated for her poise and royal transformation, become the punchline of an industry that once embraced her? And why did Maya, of all people, decide to be the one to call her out? Hold that thought, because this wasn't just a joke gone wrong. This was the breaking point of a long-simmering tension between authenticity and illusion, between a comedian who earned her crown through talent and a duchess who some say borrowed hers through performance. It all started days before the show even aired. Word around the industry was that Seth Meyers had secured a surprise guest, someone known for speaking her mind. When it was announced to be Maya Rudolph, the internet buzzed. Her humor is razor-sharp, her delivery flawless, and her ability to say what everyone's thinking, but no one dares to say, legendary. The timing was perfect, or depending on who you ask, fatal. Meghan had just appeared in another PR puff piece, promoting her new humanitarian project, while rumors swirled about her strained ties with the royal family. The headlines were sympathetic on the surface, but full of barbed subtext: failed Netflix deal, fading public interest, declining brand partnerships. People were asking, quietly but persistently, is Meghan Markle losing her magic? So when Maya Rudolph took her seat opposite Seth Meyers that evening, holding her trademark half-smirk, everyone expected mischief. But no one expected carnage. Seth leaned in, asking casually, "So Maya, what do you think about this whole royal culture in Hollywood?" A harmless question, or so it seemed. Maya tilted her head, paused, and said something that froze the air in the room. "Oh, you mean the fake duchess?" The audience erupted, some laughing, some gasping. It wasn't just a jab. It was an execution. Even Seth, who'd built a career walking the line between safe and sharp, fumbled for words. "You mean, Meghan Markle?" he asked cautiously. Maya just smiled. "Well, if the tiara fits." Laughter. Applause. Nervous energy. The kind of laughter that hides discomfort. But Maya didn't stop there. "You ever notice," she continued, "how every time she talks about being royal, it sounds like she's auditioning for another season of Suits? Like, honey, if you're gonna play Duchess, at least commit to the accent." The audience howled, Seth's face turned red, and the internet began recording, clipping, and tweeting before the show even ended. And just like that, the moment went viral. But to understand why that moment hit so hard, why it hurt, you have to go back to what Meghan represents to Hollywood. For years, she was seen as the woman who won the modern fairy tale. A biracial American actress who married into British royalty, defied the system, and brought a breath of change to the monarchy. It was inspiring, cinematic, revolutionary, until the charm started to fade. Because somewhere along the way, the story began to feel scripted. Meghan's every move, her speeches, her interviews, her carefully orchestrated appearances started looking less like acts of empowerment and more like PR choreography. The same phrases, the same emotional crescendos, the same victim narrative recycled again and again. And Hollywood noticed. People like Maya Rudolph noticed. This wasn't jealousy, it was fatigue. The entertainment industry thrives on authenticity, and nothing grates on its nerves more than a celebrity who tries too hard to appear real. To them, Meghan had become a brand, not a person. A duchess of image, not of grace. So when Maya Rudolph used that single word, fake, it wasn't comedy. It was a verdict. But the real sting came from what followed. In the hours after the taping, studio insiders whispered that Meghan's name became off-limits in post-production. Producers debated whether to cut the "fake duchess" comment, fearing backlash. Seth Meyers' PR team allegedly wanted to edit around it, but NBC executives knew what they had: viral gold. And in Hollywood, controversy sells. Within hours of the episode airing, social media exploded. Clips circulated with captions like "Maya Rudolph ends Meghan Markle's royal illusion," and "Comedian says what we're all thinking." Fans split into two camps. One side praised Maya for her courage to speak the truth. The other accused her of cruelty and bullying. But what made the story burn hotter wasn't just Maya's words, it was Meghan's silence. In the past, Meghan would have issued a statement, a carefully worded letter through her publicist, claiming hurt and misrepresentation. But this time, nothing. No denial. No response. Just quiet. And in that silence, the world began to wonder, was Maya right? Was Meghan really a fake duchess? The irony was sharp. Meghan had built her entire public identity on storytelling, on crafting the narrative before anyone else could. But now, someone else was controlling the story, and it was Maya Rudolph with a single punchline. And while most saw a joke, insiders saw a deeper shift, a cultural reckoning. Because when comedy turns against you, it means the culture has turned too. Let's not forget, Maya Rudolph isn't your average comedian. She's Hollywood royalty in her own right, daughter of music legend Minnie Riperton, a Saturday Night Live veteran, and one of the few stars respected across every demographic. When she speaks, people listen. When she jokes, they read between the lines. And when she mocks, it's usually because she knows something others don't. Some claim Maya had personal reasons, that she'd crossed paths with Meghan long before the royal wedding, during Meghan's pre-suits hustle in Los Angeles. Rumors suggest Maya remembered Meghan's early Hollywood persona, ambitious, networking, constantly performing. She was always acting like she was meant for something bigger, a source once told a magazine. Like the rest of us, we're just stepping stones. So when Maya called her a fake duchess, maybe it wasn't just about titles. Maybe it was about the mask. And in Hollywood, everyone wears one. But some masks crack faster than others. What made this moment so fascinating wasn't just the insult. It was the truth behind it. The idea that Meghan had spent years perfecting a royal image, while slowly losing the one thing that made her compelling: authenticity. Because people don't fall in love with perfection. They fall in love with truth. And that night, Maya Rudolph, through comedy, held up a mirror to Meghan's image and asked the question no one else dared to. Who are you really, when the cameras stop rolling? Was she still the passionate humanitarian who spoke of equality and empathy? Or had she become a performer trapped in her own script, unable to tell where the act ended and real life began? The more people replayed the clip, the more they saw layers: humor, discomfort, power, truth. Maya's smirk wasn't just mischief, it was revelation. By the end of the week, media outlets couldn't stop talking about it. Entertainment magazines dissected every syllable. TikTok creators turned the "fake duchess" moment into audio memes. Late-night hosts debated whether Maya went too far. But the damage was already done. The brand Meghan had so carefully curated had been punctured by laughter. And once the audience starts laughing at you instead of with you, there's no script that can save you. The real tragedy? It wasn't just public perception that shifted, it was private alliances too. Reports soon emerged that Meghan's team had made frantic calls to publicists, producers, even Maya's agent, demanding an apology. None came. Because in Hollywood, you can't cancel someone who's telling the truth everyone recognizes. That's what made Maya's words so lethal. They weren't hateful. They were accurate. And deep down, even Meghan's defenders knew it. As one insider whispered to a British tabloid, when Maya said it, people laughed. But privately, they nodded. Still, there's one question that remains unanswered. Why that night? Why choose that moment, that platform, to deliver such a blow? Was it coincidence, or was it carefully timed? Because something else happened behind the scenes, something few people know. A private email, a whispered feud, and a phone call that would ignite a silent war between two women who understood the power of public perception better than anyone. And it all started with that joke. But what came next would turn a single comedic jab into a full-blown cultural moment. A moment that would expose Hollywood's double standard, fracture Meghan's fragile image, and reveal a truth no PR team could bury. The night Maya Rudolph called Meghan Markle a fake duchess wasn't just late-night television. It was a reckoning. And if you think that was the end of it, think again. Because what came after would change everything, and no one saw it coming. No one expected the laughter to feel dangerous that night. Not the producers, not the audience, not even Seth Meyers himself. It was supposed to be a feel-good segment, a blend of Hollywood charm and cheeky humor to close the week. But as the lights dimmed, as the theme music faded, and as Maya Rudolph took her seat, the air in the studio felt heavier than usual. You could almost sense something unscripted was about to happen. Every so often, a moment on live television becomes more than entertainment. It becomes a line in the sand, a moment when someone finally says what everyone else has been whispering. This was one of those nights. Maya Rudolph wasn't there to play nice. She was there to make people laugh, but laughter can sting. And on that stage, under the blinding glow of cameras and applause, she was about to ignite a cultural firestorm that would leave Meghan Markle's carefully curated image in ruins. When Seth introduced her, his usual grin seemed just a bit too tight. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incomparable Maya Rudolph," he said, clapping with that nervous energy that only live TV brings. Maya walked in, radiant, composed, wearing a tailored velvet suit that shimmered under the lights. Her smile was warm, but her eyes, sharp, scanning, aware, told another story. This wasn't just another appearance. Something was brewing beneath the surface. She greeted Seth with a hug, waved at the crowd, and took her seat. The first few minutes were harmless banter. Seth asked about her recent project, a comedy film that was breaking records on streaming platforms. The audience laughed. Everything seemed normal. Then Seth, always looking for that perfect viral moment, asked the question that changed everything. "So Maya," he said, half grinning, "you've played everything from a rock star to a senator. If you could play anyone real right now, who would it be?" The audience chuckled, expecting another celebrity name or maybe a politician. But Maya's pause was long, too long. Her smirk widened, and then she said it. "Oh, I don't know, maybe that Duchess lady. You know, the fake one." The room froze. It was the kind of silence that you could feel in your bones. A few people laughed nervously, unsure if they'd heard her right. Then she leaned forward, eyes gleaming, and added, "You know the one. The actress who quit acting by acting royal." Boom. The crowd exploded. Laughter, gasps, claps. A wave of disbelief rippled through the studio. Seth tried to cover his face with his cue cards, laughing nervously as he muttered, "Oh my God, Maya." But Maya wasn't done. "I mean, come on," she continued, her tone perfectly balanced between humor and truth. Every time she talks about privacy, she books another TV special. Every time she says she's done with the drama, she brings a camera crew. The crowd roared louder. It was chaos masked as comedy. And there it was, the moment the internet would replay 1,000 times. The moment when Hollywood's laughter turned from polite amusement into public judgment. But beneath that laughter, something deeper was happening. It wasn't just mockery, it was release. The audience wasn't laughing at the joke. They were laughing at years of pent-up frustration. You could see it in the faces of the audience members. Relief. Recognition. They'd been holding it in for too long. Because for years, Meghan Markle had positioned herself as the untouchable duchess, a symbol of resilience, compassion, and modernity. But as scandal after scandal mounted, as every gesture felt increasingly performative, people grew tired of pretending they didn't see the cracks. Maya just gave them permission to laugh at the illusion. And that's why it hit so hard. Seth, trying to regain control, smiled tightly. "You're going to get us in trouble," he said, chuckling, his voice just a shade too high. Maya shrugged. "What are they going to do? Take away my crown?" That line hit like lightning. The audience's laughter was now deafening. The sound cruise meters were peaking. Even Seth couldn't resist the wave. He laughed too, shaking his head. But not everyone was laughing. Because in that same moment, across the city, Meghan Markle's team was watching the live broadcast. According to insiders later, Meghan had tuned in casually, expecting light comedy, maybe even a friendly mention. What she got instead was a brutal public undressing of her image. Sources claimed she froze. Her phone lit up, text after text from PR advisors, friends, even a few sympathetic celebrities. Some messages read, "Are you watching this?" Others said, "You need to respond." But Meghan didn't. Not right away. She just sat there, staring at the screen as the laughter echoed through her living room. Because for the first time, it wasn't just the tabloids or social media critics questioning her authenticity. It was Hollywood itself. And that stung more than any headline. Back in the studio, Maya's energy remained effortless. Every word she said carried that natural rhythm of truth disguised as wit. She talked about how people in Hollywood pretend to be relatable until the cameras stop rolling. She joked about celebrity activism being charity for likes. Each line landed like a dagger wrapped in velvet. And though she never said Meghan's name again, everyone knew who she meant. By the time the show ended, Seth looked exhausted. He thanked Maya, smiled at the camera, and said his usual line, "We'll be right back after this." But as the applause swelled, the crew's faces told a different story. They knew they had captured lightning in a bottle. Within minutes, clips of the segment started spreading. Studio interns leaked recordings, audience members uploaded blurry footage, and social media caught fire. Hashtags like #FakeDuchess and #MayaUnmasked started trending within hours. Twitter was divided, but the engagement was astronomical. Some users praised Maya for saying what everyone was thinking. Others condemned her, claiming she'd attacked another woman just for existing. But no one could ignore it. Because for the first time in years, Meghan Markle wasn't controlling her narrative, someone else was. That loss of control was devastating. Insiders later described the mood in Meghan's Montecito mansion as frantic. Phones ringing, assistants pacing, PR teams drafting statements that would never see daylight. Aides reportedly warned her, "If you respond too soon, it'll look defensive. If you don't respond at all, it'll look guilty." Meghan chose silence. But silence can speak louder than words. In Hollywood, silence after a scandal doesn't calm the storm, it feeds it. And by the next morning, the internet had turned Maya's comment into folklore. TikTok creators were lip-syncing the "fake Duchess" line. Memes flooded Instagram. YouTube commentators broke down Maya's facial expressions, tone, and timing as if analyzing historical footage. But there was one thing everyone agreed on. Maya wasn't just joking. She was making a statement. And that's when the question began circulating among entertainment insiders. Did Maya know exactly what she was doing? Because some claimed that this wasn't spontaneous at all, that Maya's remark had been rehearsed, maybe even planned. A deliberate choice to make a point, to draw a line between authenticity and artifice. If that's true, then it wasn't just a punchline. It was a declaration of war. You see, in Hollywood, words carry weight, especially when spoken by someone like Maya Rudolph. She's not the kind of star who courts controversy for attention. She doesn't need to. Her reputation, her legacy, her comedic brilliance, those speak for her. So when she chooses to aim her words at someone, it's because she means them. And that's what terrified Meghan's camp the most. Because this wasn't a gossip columnist or a YouTuber with an agenda, it was a respected comedian calling her out on the world stage. The moment Maya walked off the set, according to an eyewitness, she was calm, unapologetic. She knew exactly what she'd unleashed. She didn't seem rattled at all, a crew member recalled. In fact, she looked relieved, like she'd finally said something she'd been holding in for a long time. Meanwhile, Seth Meyers reportedly retreated to his office, laughing nervously as he told producers, "Well, that'll trend." And trend it did. For days, weeks even. Entertainment podcasts dissected the moment. British tabloids picked it up, framing it as Hollywood finally turns on Meghan. American outlets hesitated, unsure whether to defend or distance themselves from the Duchess. But the real drama wasn't happening in the headlines. It was happening behind closed doors. Because the morning after that episode, Meghan Markle made a phone call that would set off a chain reaction no one expected. According to one insider, she called a close friend, someone she trusted deeply in Hollywood, to vent, to cry, to strategize. But what that friend said in response would change everything. And it wasn't sympathy. Because even inside her own circle, the tide was turning. The late-night episode had done more than embarrass Meghan. It had exposed a truth that many had been too polite to say out loud. The fairy tale was over. The audience wasn't enchanted anymore. They were entertained, but for the wrong reasons. And that's the cruel irony of fame. The same spotlight that lifts you up will burn you if you stand under it too long pretending to be someone you're not. That night, Maya Rudolph didn't just make a joke. She made history. But what Meghan did next, how she tried to reclaim her power, how she reached out to one of her last Hollywood allies, would take this from a viral moment to a full-blown cultural reckoning. Because what came next wasn't about comedy anymore. It was about survival. And no one saw it coming. They say a single word can change everything. That night, it did. Fake. Just 4 letters. 1 syllable. But that was all it took to pierce the illusion Meghan Markle had built. An illusion polished by publicists, guarded by lawyers, and lit by the world's cameras. When Maya Rudolph said it, the sound carried across the studio like thunder rolling through glass. And when it hit Meghan, miles away in her Montecito mansion, it didn't just sting. It shattered something inside her. Imagine it. The duchess who once stood beside the late queen, who walked red carpets in couture gowns, who spoke of compassion and truth, now hearing her entire persona reduced to one brutal adjective: fake. But maybe what hurt most wasn't the insult. It was the recognition. Because deep down, even Meghan's most loyal defenders had started asking the same question. Who was the real Meghan Markle? Was she the humanitarian? The victim? The power player? Or just another Hollywood act in a crown? The morning after Maya's appearance on Late Night, social media was a wildfire. Fake Duchess was everywhere, trending across X, Instagram, and TikTok. Clips from the show had racked up millions of views overnight. Influencers reenacted Maya's lines with exaggerated royal accents. Meme pages spliced Meghan's past speeches about authenticity with Maya's punchline. And the comments? Oh, the comments were merciless. Finally, someone said it. She's been acting since 2018. Maya Rudolph just ended her whole PR career in one sentence. The internet had turned cruelty into comedy. But behind the screens, something far more personal was unfolding. According to a source close to Meghan's circle, she didn't sleep that night. Her phone buzzed endlessly, messages from her team, from friends, even from old Hollywood contacts she hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had advice. But Meghan wasn't listening. She was staring at the replay of that clip over and over. Maya's tone, the laughter, the way Seth tried, and failed, to save the moment. Each detail was a wound reopening. At one point, she reportedly muttered, "They're all jealous," before throwing her phone onto the sofa. Her publicist, panicking, tried to spin it immediately. "We can issue a response," they suggested. Something dignified. Grace under fire. Maybe a subtle post about kindness and empathy. How women shouldn't tear each other down. But Meghan didn't respond. She just sat there, silent. Because she knew. She'd built her entire image on that same weapon, public perception. When she and Prince Harry broke from the royal family, she'd mastered the narrative of the oppressed versus the institution. When tabloids criticized her, she'd positioned herself as the misunderstood hero. But now, that strategy had backfired. The public had grown weary of the performance. And Maya Rudolph had voiced what millions were already whispering. It wasn't just a joke, it was a mirror. A week before this storm, Meghan had made a speech at a private women's empowerment summit in Los Angeles. She spoke about authenticity, about how fame can distort the truth of who you are. Stay grounded, she told the audience. Be real, even when the world expects you to perform. The irony of that speech became viral ammunition. Clips of it resurfaced online, paired with Maya's fake Duchess line. Side by side, the contrast was brutal. One TikTok creator captioned it, "When the actress forgets her lines." That was the problem. Every time Meghan tried to be authentic, it came across as rehearsed. And for the first time, her silence wasn't seen as grace. It was seen as guilt. Meanwhile, inside NBC's headquarters, producers were celebrating the show's record-breaking viewership. Seth Meyers' team hadn't seen engagement numbers like this in years. The late-night clip was now their most-watched segment of the decade. Advertisers were ecstatic. But there was one person who wasn't celebrating: Maya Rudolph herself. Friends said she'd gone quiet after the show. No tweets, no interviews, no follow-ups. She hadn't expected the comment to explode like this. Yes, she meant every word, but she hadn't intended to start a cultural avalanche. Then again, maybe she should have known. Because what she said tapped into something deeper, an exhaustion with celebrity hypocrisy. Hollywood had changed since Meghan's royal debut. The woke era of curated virtue signaling was collapsing under its own weight. Fans wanted something raw again, something honest. And Meghan, with her endless speeches and perfectly staged compassion, represented everything people had grown tired of. Maya's word, fake, became a shorthand for all of it. A single syllable that said what everyone else had been afraid to say. But the more viral it became, the angrier Meghan grew. Her team called for emergency meetings. PR strategists debated whether to sue, to issue a statement, or to let the storm die. But the longer they waited, the louder the laughter became. By midweek, even mainstream media had joined the conversation. Entertainment Tonight ran a segment titled Maya vs. Meghan, When Comedy Crosses the Line. CNN covered the story from a social commentary angle. British tabloids turned it into a full-scale media war, with headlines like Hollywood finally turns on the Duchess. But the real humiliation came from the late-night circuit itself. Jimmy Kimmel made a joke about duchessing your way through life. Stephen Colbert quipped, "Even the Queen's corgis saw this coming." And Saturday Night Live reportedly planned a sketch based on the incident, starring Maya herself. To the public, it was hilarious. To Meghan, it was devastating. Inside her Montecito home, the atmosphere grew colder by the day. Staff described her as distant and volatile. One assistant claimed Meghan canceled 3 upcoming appearances, citing fatigue, though insiders knew it was fear of being mocked again. Because once comedians turn on you, the audience follows. Still, there was one person Meghan thought might help her, someone powerful, someone respected, someone who understood public reinvention better than anyone: Oprah Winfrey. According to a close source, Meghan called Oprah the day after Maya's appearance. She needed advice, sympathy, a plan. But Oprah, ever the strategist, was cautious. She told Meghan to stay calm, the insider said, to wait it out, to not give Maya more oxygen. But the tone, Meghan reportedly noted, was distant, detached, not the warm, maternal support she'd expected. It was as if even Oprah knew the tide was turning, and Meghan could feel it. She'd faced criticism before, but this felt different. This wasn't about royal etiquette or family feuds. This was about her identity, her credibility, her entire public persona being stripped away by laughter. Maya had done in 5 minutes what no journalist or royal biographer could achieve in 5 years. She'd broken the illusion. And in the entertainment world, illusion is everything. By the 3rd day, Meghan's PR team was in full crisis mode. They drafted 3 different statements, each with a different tone. One was defensive, another sympathetic, and one subtly vengeful. None were approved, because Meghan knew no amount of polished words could outshine a viral clip. So she did what she always did when cornered. She tried to pivot the story. Her team leaked a story to a lifestyle magazine about her new humanitarian project, hoping to redirect attention. It worked for a few hours, until the comments turned the article into a mockery. Humanitarian project? More like reputation rehab. She should start a charity for people recovering from bad jokes. Hashtag Fake Duchess Foundation incoming. Even sympathy had become parody. And that's when the emotional fallout began. Friends claimed Meghan began cutting people off, anyone who didn't publicly defend her. A-list acquaintances went quiet. Even those who once posted selfies with her began keeping their distance. No one wanted to pick a side in the new Hollywood divide. Maya Rudolph, on the other hand, was receiving messages from other celebrities, private thank yous, quiet nods of respect. They couldn't say it publicly, but many agreed. Maya had spoken the truth. And truth, in Hollywood, is dangerous, because it exposes the fragile architecture of fame, the idea that image can replace integrity. For Meghan, that truth was a nightmare. Every article, every clip, every social media post felt like a ghost of her former image mocking her. Her silence stretched on, and the longer it lasted, the more people saw it as confirmation. She was the fake Duchess. The irony was poetic. Meghan had spent years lecturing others about living their truth. Now, she was being called out for not having one. And the deeper irony? Maya Rudolph didn't even need to say her name. The world filled in the blanks. That's the power of truth. It doesn't need names. It just needs recognition. But if Meghan thought this would pass, she was mistaken. Because behind the scenes, her silence wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something far more volatile. Something that would pit her against not just Maya Rudolph, but the very industry that once worshipped her. Because the next move Meghan made, The desperate phone call, the attempt to rewrite the narrative, would backfire spectacularly. And it all began the moment she picked up her phone and dialed one of her last remaining Hollywood allies. A man who had once protected her, supported her, and believed her story. But after that call, even he would begin to question everything. What happened during that conversation would mark the turning point of Meghan's unraveling, and it would send shockwaves through Hollywood's elite. Because sometimes, when you reach out for help, you accidentally dial your downfall. And that's exactly what was about to happen next. The word had already broken her image. The call would break her world, and no one saw it coming. When the cameras stopped rolling and the applause faded into echo, the real show began, not on stage, but in private. Somewhere in Montecito, under soft California moonlight, Meghan Markle sat alone in her living room, phone in hand, scrolling through the fallout of Maya Rudolph's late-night appearance. The headlines were merciless, the memes endless. And for the first time in a long time, the duchess who once commanded the world's sympathy felt truly powerless. Her husband, Prince Harry, was out of town, reportedly attending a private veterans event in San Diego. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of air conditioning and the occasional ping of new notifications lighting up her screen. She'd been sitting there for hours, replaying the same moment over and over. Maya Rudolph's smirk, the studio's laughter, Seth Meyers' helpless chuckle, and that one word that refused to leave her mind, fake. Every article, every clip, every tweet felt like a dagger dressed in humor. There was no denying it anymore. The world wasn't laughing with her, they were laughing at her. At 1:43 a.m., Meghan picked up her phone and scrolled through her contacts. There was only one name that stood out. Someone she thought would understand. Someone who'd been there before. When the tabloids turned, when public sympathy dried up, when silence became a threat. Tyler Perry. He wasn't just a friend. He'd been a savior during her post-royal exile, offering her and Harry a home when they left the UK. He'd become a confidant, a quiet advisor, someone who understood the ruthless machinery of fame. And if anyone could tell her how to spin this disaster into redemption, it was him. She hit call. The line rang twice before his voice came through. Calm, deep, measured. Meghan? You okay? There was a pause. Too long. She wasn't okay. Did you see it? She whispered. He sighed. Yeah, I did. Everyone's talking about it, she said, her voice trembling. They're calling me a fake, Tyler. A fake duchess. Can you believe that? After everything I've been through. He didn't answer right away. Silence filled the line. That silence said more than words could. Tyler, she pressed, her tone tightening. You don't think she's right, do you? He exhaled slowly. I think Maya was being Maya. She's a comedian. She calls things like she sees them. That's not funny, Meghan snapped. It's defamation. It's humiliation. She used my name to make people laugh at me. She didn't use your name, Tyler corrected gently. She didn't have to. That's what made it powerful. Meghan froze. The truth in his words stung more than Maya's joke. Listen, he continued, his voice calm but firm. You've got to be smart about this. Don't react emotionally. You can't fight comedy. You'll lose. The more you respond, the more you feed it. So what do? Sit here and let her destroy me. Let her joke die, he said. It'll fade. Everything does. But if you come out swinging, it'll look like you can't take a punch. Meghan's silence returned. She wasn't used to being told to wait, to stay quiet. That was the palace's playbook, not hers. But this wasn't the palace anymore. People are laughing at me, she whispered. Do you know how that feels? I do, Tyler said softly. Everyone gets their turn. But you have to decide what this moment will mean for you. Is it humiliation or transformation? It was a kind answer, a wise one. But Meghan wasn't in the mood for philosophy. She wanted revenge. I'm not letting her get away with this, she said coldly. I made a brand out of truth and compassion, and she mocked it on live television. That can't stand. Tyler hesitated. Meg, be careful. The audience can forgive anything except entitlement. You go after a comedian, you'll look like the villain. She didn't reply. She was already opening another contact, her publicist. But before she could hang up, Tyler added something that stopped her cold. You know, he said slowly, maybe she's not attacking you. Maybe she's warning you. Warning me. Yeah, he said. People see things before you do sometimes. If Maya's words hit this hard, it's because there's truth in them somewhere. You might want to look at that before you try to silence it. That sentence echoed long after the call ended. Look at that. The words burrowed into her mind like a seed she didn't want to water, because deep down, she knew he was right. The image she'd built, glossy, perfect, regal, had begun to feel hollow even to her. She'd seen it in her own reflection during interviews, in the way her carefully rehearsed compassion sometimes felt like performance. But admitting that meant surrendering the illusion she'd spent years crafting. So instead of self-reflection, she turned to control. Within hours of that call, her PR team had drafted a full-blown strategy. The plan: reshape the narrative. Make Meghan the victim of comedic bullying. Reignite public sympathy. Spin Maya's joke as part of a pattern: powerful women tearing each other down. But there was a problem. Even Meghan's own allies didn't want to touch this story. Hollywood had moved on. The appetite for her sob stories had dried up. Even sympathetic journalists were wary. "We can't defend you against a comedian," one contact told her bluntly. "That's career suicide." And so the silence stretched on. By the end of the week, Maya Rudolph had said nothing. No apologies. No clarifications. No interviews. Her silence, ironically, made her stronger. It gave her the moral high ground. Meanwhile, Meghan's image grew weaker by the hour. Her team tried subtle damage control, planting puff pieces about her resilience and focus on family. They leaked a story about her and Harry, turning inward to prioritize their children. But the timing made it transparent. Everyone knew it was PR theater. And when you try to rewrite the story after a joke, it only proves the joke right. Tyler Perry's warning was coming true in real time. But that didn't stop Meghan. Behind closed doors, she continued calling friends, former colleagues, anyone with influence. Most calls went unanswered. The few who picked up were cautious, diplomatic, evasive. Hollywood had begun distancing itself, not out of cruelty, but fatigue. The fake duchess moment had crystallized something people had felt but never voiced. They were tired of the performance. But one call changed everything. Not because of what was said, but because of who was listening. On Friday morning, Meghan reportedly called another confidant, someone who had connections in both media and politics. The conversation was supposed to be private. But somehow, within 24 hours, details of that call leaked to an entertainment outlet. The headline? Meghan Markle planning legal action over fake duchess comment. The story spread like wildfire. Journalists reached out to NBC for comment. Seth Meyers' team declined. Maya's representatives didn't bother responding. But the idea of Meghan suing a comedian for a joke was so absurd that it became its own punchline. Late-night hosts began mocking her again. Jimmy Fallon joked, "Next on Netflix, Suits 2, the lawsuit." James Corden quipped, "If Meghan sues every comedian who calls her fake, she'll need a bigger court." And just like that, Meghan's attempt to reclaim power made her even weaker. Tyler called her again that night. "What did you do?" She denied it at first. "It's all lies. I never said that." "Meg," he said gently, "it's all over the press." She paused. "Then someone in my circle is leaking." And she was right. Because that was the night the betrayal began. The first crack in her shrinking circle of trust. Someone she'd called for support had turned her words into headlines. Someone who once promised loyalty had realized her downfall was more profitable than her friendship. That realization broke something deeper than Maya's joke ever could. By the weekend, the narrative had shifted again. Maya Rudolph was being hailed as a truth-teller. Articles praised her for challenging celebrity hypocrisy with humor. The Atlantic ran an op-ed titled, "When Laughter Becomes Justice." Meghan, meanwhile, had become a case study in self-inflicted collapse. And Tyler Perry? He stopped answering her calls. Not out of anger, but exhaustion. He'd given her advice she refused to take. He'd seen too many stars make the same mistake, mistaking control for authenticity. Because in Hollywood, when the laughter turns against you, the only way to survive is to laugh with it. But Meghan couldn't. She didn't know how. The fake duchess moment had cracked her public image. But this betrayal, this isolation, this spiral, was the start of something worse. It wasn't just her reputation that was breaking. It was her trust. And when trust collapses, power follows. By the next week, whispers began circulating in the industry. Executives at Netflix, Spotify, and major event organizers started reevaluating partnerships. Her brand had become radioactive. She wasn't the inspirational figure anymore. She was the controversy risk. Maya Rudolph's single joke had set off a domino effect that even she couldn't have predicted. But for Meghan, it was no longer about the joke. It was about survival. And in that quiet, echoing house in Montecito, one decision was forming, a dangerous, desperate plan to claw back control. She would find the leak. She would expose the traitor. She would make them pay. Because if Maya had destroyed her in public, Meghan would fight back in private. But what she didn't realize was that the person she was hunting wasn't her enemy at all. They were about to become her biggest revelation yet. And what came next would make Maya Rudolph's words look gentle in comparison. Because the truth behind that leak would shake Hollywood to its core, and it all started with one late-night phone call. The call that changed everything. Hollywood smiles are like diamonds, bright, dazzling, and utterly untrustworthy. They sparkle on red carpets, beam across interviews, and light up charity galas. But behind them lies something far sharper, calculation. And in Meghan Markle's case, those smiles were fading fast. In the weeks following Maya Rudolph's now infamous fake duchess remark, the silence of Hollywood wasn't neutral. It was loaded. Not a single A-lister defended Meghan publicly. No one reposted supportive messages, no stay strong tweets, no carefully worded PR sympathies. It was as if the entire industry collectively decided to step back, quietly, deliberately. A silent boycott had begun. It didn't start with anger. It started with fatigue. The same fatigue that had been building for years. The exhaustion of watching Meghan turn every headline, every scandal, every misstep into a platform for self-pity. The industry had indulged it once, back when she was the glamorous outsider, the woman who'd escaped royal oppression. But that narrative had lost its shine. Now, she wasn't the underdog. She was the problem. It started subtly. Meghan's invitations to certain events were suddenly delayed. A-list dinner parties that once welcomed her and Harry ran out of seats. When Meghan's PR team reached out to secure a high-profile appearance at a charity gala, organizers politely declined, citing scheduling conflicts. But everyone knew what that meant. No one wanted to be seen standing next to her. Because in Hollywood, association is currency, and Meghan's had crashed overnight. Her brand had become toxic, not because of Maya's joke alone, but because the joke had exposed what everyone already knew but hadn't dared say aloud. The Duchess was an act that had run too long. Inside studio offices, producers whispered what agents wouldn't say publicly. She's high risk now. Every time she opens her mouth, it's a PR nightmare. If we hire her, we're endorsing the drama. And once those words enter Hollywood air, they spread faster than wildfire. One casting executive, speaking under anonymity, admitted, "We'd considered Meghan for a guest role last year, just for the buzz. But after that late-night thing, no chance." The audience turned. You could feel it. That's the thing about show business. Loyalty is just good business until it's not. The same people who had praised her, posted her speeches, and clinked champagne glasses in her honor were now keeping their distance. Not out of cruelty, but survival. No one wanted to get dragged into the black hole of controversy that followed her name. And yet, the most painful part for Meghan wasn't the loss of invitations. It was the silence of the ones she thought were friends. The ones who once called her sis. The ones who attended her baby shower in New York. The ones who texted her after every public meltdown, promising solidarity. Gone. Not even a hang in there. Not even a private message. It was as if they'd vanished overnight, their loyalty evaporating the moment Maya's laughter hit the airwaves. Behind closed doors, Meghan's frustration turned to fury. She paced the marble floors of her Montecito estate, clutching her phone, muttering to herself. They're cowards. Every single one of them. They loved me when it made them look good. Now they're afraid. Her assistant tried to calm her. Maybe people are just waiting for it to pass. Meghan snapped. It won't pass if they don't say something. She wasn't wrong. In Hollywood, silence is the loudest verdict. And hers was unanimous. Her PR team kept working overtime, pitching interviews, op-eds, podcast appearances. But the responses were always the same. Not right now. The timing isn't ideal. We'll circle back. No one was circling back. Netflix executives began backing away too. Her production deal, once touted as a revolutionary partnership, was quietly being reevaluated. The buzzwords in the emails were polite, creative direction, strategic shift, but the message underneath was brutal. The platform no longer saw her as a profitable figure. When a brand built on royal power loses public interest, it loses everything. Even the charity world, once her safe haven, began closing doors. Invitations to speak at empowerment events were postponed. Sponsorship opportunities dried up. She was still a name, but now it was a liability. Hollywood doesn't cancel people in press releases. It cancels them with polite smiles, unreturned calls, and silent rejections. And Meghan was learning that lesson in real time. The irony was unbearable. She had spent years condemning the British royal family for their coldness, their emotional distance, their silent judgment. But now, Hollywood was treating her the same way. The Hollywood Palace, as insiders sometimes joke, had spoken, and their decree was simple: exile. For the first time, Meghan began to realize she had no safe side. The royals wouldn't have her. The industry didn't want her. And the public? They were laughing. Still, she tried to fight it. One evening, she decided to reach out to a trusted friend from her Suits days, hoping for advice. The call went straight to voicemail. She tried another. The same. A third. This time, an A-list actress she'd once shared a stage with at a charity gala. That one picked up, but the tone was icy. "Hey, Meghan," the actress said cautiously. "Hey," Meghan began, forcing cheer into her voice. "I just wanted to check in. Things have been intense." "Yeah, I saw," came the reply. "I can't believe she said that," Meghan continued. "It's so mean, so unnecessary." A pause. Then, the words that hit harder than Maya's punchline. "Look, Meg," the actress said quietly. "I love you, but people are tired. You've got to let this go." "Let what go?" Meghan snapped. "Being mocked? Being humiliated?" "No," the actress said softly. "Being the victim." Click. The line went dead. Meghan just sat there, staring at her phone, numb. It wasn't just a joke anymore. It was a referendum. And for once, she wasn't winning. Meanwhile, inside the same circles that once celebrated her, new whispers began to grow louder. Comedy writers, producers, even publicists were calling Maya Rudolph's fake duchess line the moment of truth. Some said it broke a spell, that Hollywood had been collectively pretending for too long, afraid to say what they really thought about Meghan's endless self-mythologizing. And once one person says the truth out loud, everyone else finds the courage to agree. By the third week, fake duchess had transcended the meme phase. It had become industry slang. Late-night hosts used it as shorthand for inauthentic celebrities. PR agents joked about duchessing your image. Maya Rudolph had accidentally created a cultural catchphrase, and Meghan Markle was its unwilling face. That's when the stories began to resurface. Old Hollywood anecdotes from people who claimed to have worked with Meghan before her royal days. Suddenly, everyone had a memory. She was nice, but always performing. She talked about networking more than acting. She once told me she was destined for royalty. Each story painted the same picture. Ambition disguised as authenticity. The narrative had crystallized. Meghan wasn't a victim anymore. She was a symbol of everything fake about modern fame. And Hollywood loves a scapegoat. Still, in the quiet of her estate, Meghan refused to give up. She began strategizing. "If they won't support me," she told her team, "I'll create my own platform." She floated the idea of launching an independent documentary, her version of Events. A tell-all, but polished. Emotional. The truth behind Maya Rudolph's attack and Hollywood's betrayal. Her PR advisors looked horrified. "Meghan, that will destroy you," one said bluntly. "You'll look vindictive. You'll confirm everything people are already saying." But Meghan wasn't listening anymore. She was in fight mode. She needed control back, over her story, her image, her power. And if Hollywood wouldn't give it, she'd take it. The irony was thick. The same woman who once preached empathy and unity was now plotting vengeance behind designer curtains. But she wasn't alone in her anger. Someone else was watching. Someone inside her own circle who'd been quietly growing frustrated. Someone who'd seen the tantrums, the paranoia, the desperate need for attention. And that person was about to turn against her in a way that would make Maya Rudolph's joke look like child's play. Because when a silent boycott turns into active rebellion, there's no hiding from it. What Meghan didn't know was that her private frustrations, the outbursts, the accusations, the paranoia, were being recorded. And soon, Those recordings would make their way into the hands of someone who had no loyalty left. The silent boycott was just the beginning. The next act? A betrayal so intimate, so devastating, it would shake not just Hollywood, but Meghan's entire identity. Because when the masks come off in this town, everyone shows their true face. And Meghan was about to discover that behind Hollywood's smile lies something far colder than any royal family could ever muster: indifference. But what she'd face next wouldn't be indifference, it would be vengeance. And no one saw it coming. There's an unspoken rule in comedy, a sacred line that separates cruelty from truth. Break that line, and the crowd turns on you. Honor it, and you become something rare, a voice that cuts through hypocrisy with laughter. For Maya Rudolph, that night on Late Night wasn't about mockery. It was about the code that every great comedian lives by. You tell the truth, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. And that's exactly why her words, "fake duchess," landed the way they did. Because underneath the punchline wasn't malice. It was honesty. And honesty in Hollywood, the land of make-believe, is the most dangerous weapon of all. While Meghan Markle spent her days in Montecito spiraling between outrage and panic, Maya Rudolph went on living her life, quietly, calmly, without apology. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't gloating. She was simply doing what she'd always done, telling jokes that made people uncomfortable because they exposed what no one else would admit. The difference this time? Her target wasn't a politician or a celebrity scandal. It was a cultural illusion. For years, Meghan had built her public identity on being the authentic royal, the outsider who challenged tradition. But Maya, in a single sentence, tore down the theater curtains and showed the audience the stage lights. Comedy is a mirror. And when you hold that mirror up to someone who's built their fame on perfection, they often recoil. That's what happened here. People didn't laugh at Meghan because they hated her. They laughed because, for once, someone had said what they'd been thinking all along, and done it with a smile. In the days following the viral moment, other comedians began weighing in, not in condemnation, but in solidarity. Chris Rock was the first to comment subtly during a podcast. "Look," he said, "if a joke gets under your skin that much, maybe it's not the joke, it's the truth inside it." Then came Tiffany Haddish, who tweeted, "Maya didn't drag her. She unmasked her." Even Kevin Hart, known for staying neutral in celebrity wars, chimed in during a stand-up set in Chicago. "You can't call yourself real and then freak out when someone laughs at you," he said. "That's not royalty. That's reality TV." The audience roared. In Hollywood, laughter spreads like gossip. And now, Meghan Markle had become comedy currency. Every joke, every punchline, every meme reinforced the same message: authenticity can't be performed. But what most people didn't know was that Maya Rudolph hadn't just improvised that moment. She'd thought about it, long and hard. According to one of her longtime collaborators, Maya had debated whether to bring up Meghan at all during the show. She knew it would blow up, the colleague said. But she also felt like it was time. Everyone was walking on eggshells around Meghan. You couldn't even mention her without people accusing you of hate. Maya just said, "That's not real. We're comedians. We're supposed to poke the illusion." That was the difference between Maya and the rest. She wasn't afraid of losing friends or followers. She believed in the craft more than the crowd. And in comedy, that's the ultimate test. But truth-telling has a price. After the Late Night episode aired, Maya received an influx of messages, some supportive, some venomous. Meghan's fans flooded her social media accounts, accusing her of cruelty, racism, jealousy. Hashtags like #BoycottMayaRudolph began trending. But for every angry post, there were 10 more applauding her bravery. Still, even comedians have private moments of doubt. In an interview weeks later, Maya would admit, "Comedy's supposed to be brave, but it's also supposed to be kind. I try to balance both. That night, I just told the truth, and sometimes the truth doesn't sound kind." She didn't apologize, but she reflected. And that's the difference between honesty and hate, reflection. Meanwhile, Meghan's silence had turned into paranoia. Her team began collecting every comedian who'd ever mentioned her, filing it into a private dossier labeled Defamation Watch. Interns were assigned to monitor late-night shows, podcasts, even TikTok skits. Every joke became a perceived threat. Her obsession wasn't about the joke anymore. It was about control. To Meghan, Maya had violated an unspoken rule: Celebrities were supposed to protect each other. They were supposed to maintain the illusion that everyone was supportive, that the sisterhood was sacred. But Maya had shattered that pretense on live TV. And worse, Hollywood was applauding her for it. Behind the scenes, writers' rooms were buzzing. Late-night producers were pitching segments titled The Duchess Diaries and Keeping Up with the Crown. One even joked about starting a mock reality series called The Royals of Beverly Hills. For Meghan, who had spent years trying to prove she was more than a reality character, it was humiliating. But for comedians, it was open season. And that's when the code came into full view. Comedians don't punch down, they punch through. They don't attack people for who they are, but for what they pretend to be. And Meghan, to many in the entertainment world, had become the embodiment of pretense. Think about it. The lavish interviews about privacy. The Netflix series about life away from the spotlight. The public speeches about not seeking attention that somehow always came with a photo shoot. It wasn't that people hated her. It was that they couldn't buy her anymore. Maya's joke worked because it wasn't just funny. It was true. And when truth hides inside laughter, it becomes unforgettable. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. While Meghan's team was scrambling to rebuild her reputation, Maya received a private message from an anonymous account. It read simply, "Thank you for saying what we couldn't." No name, no signature. But the tone was unmistakable. Someone from inside Meghan's own circle. The message ended with a single line. "She's not who you think she is." At first, Maya brushed it off. Trolls, she thought. But the message stuck with her. Who would send something like that? And why? Days later, another message arrived, from a verified Hollywood insider this time. It said, "You didn't start this. You just exposed it. Be careful." That was when Maya realized something bigger was happening. Her joke hadn't just rattled Meghan. It had cracked open the walls of her inner circle. People close to the Duchess were talking. Quietly, carefully, but talking. The illusion was breaking from within. And in a strange way, Maya had become a catalyst for truth. Comedy, at its best, doesn't destroy people. It forces them to face themselves. And that's what Meghan refused to do. Instead of reflection, she doubled down, accusing others of betrayal, demanding loyalty oaths, cutting off anyone who questioned her narrative. But that only made her look guiltier. The world was no longer laughing with her carefully crafted image. They were laughing at the unraveling of it. And the cruel twist? Maya didn't need to say another word. Her silence was louder than any follow-up joke. It made Meghan's overreactions look desperate. That's how the comedian's code works. It doesn't chase power, it exposes it. By midsummer, Maya Rudolph's reputation had skyrocketed. She was hailed as Hollywood's new truth-teller. Talk shows invited her to discuss comedy ethics. Vanity Fair featured her on its cover with the headline, "Maya Rudolph, Laughing at the Lies." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Meghan Markle, once the face of truth and compassion, was being overshadowed by the comedian who had called her fake. And that wasn't just poetic, it was karmic. Still, Maya remained graceful. She never mocked Meghan again, never referenced her in interviews, never fed the flame. She didn't need to. The world had already made up its mind. Meanwhile, in Montecito, the silence inside Meghan's mansion had grown heavier. Former staffers whispered that she'd become withdrawn, paranoid, obsessed with fixing her image. She reportedly held late-night meetings about rebranding, floating ideas like Hollywood Royal Reborn and Authenticity 2.0. The desperation was palpable. Because here's the truth. Once comedy exposes you, you can't unsee it. The world won't let you. It's like the emperor's new clothes. Once someone points out that you're naked, the illusion is gone forever. That's what Maya had done. Not just to Meghan, but to an entire culture obsessed with pretending. The comedian's code isn't about cruelty. It's about clarity. About holding up a mirror and saying, "This is who we've become." And when that mirror reflects something ugly, the laughter hurts, but it also heals. But Meghan wasn't ready for healing. In her mind, she was still the victim, the misunderstood duchess wronged by a cruel world. And that refusal to take responsibility would drive her next move, a calculated attempt to regain power through pity. A new interview, a new campaign, a new performance. But this time, the audience wouldn't clap. Because when the joke ends and the truth remains, you can't charm your way out of it. And Meghan was about to learn that lesson in the harshest way possible. The comedians had spoken. The industry had followed. But soon, one person from inside her own world, the last person she ever expected, would step forward and deliver the final blow. Someone who knew her not as a duchess, not as an icon, but as a person. Someone who'd seen behind the act. And when they spoke, it wouldn't be with laughter, it would be with proof. Because the truth always finds a stage. And this time, it wasn't comedy that would expose her. It was betrayal, and no one saw it coming.